everyone, welcome back to Poppin' In with Alexa and Molly. I'm Molly.
And I'm Alexa.
And we are here today to talk about a lot of
women.
Yeah, I was going to say this is like a definitely...
This is going to be women on women. And not in a Pornhub way. In a thoughtful,
thought-provoking,
constructive,
nuanced,
fun, giggly way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First of all, hope everyone's doing well.
Hope everyone's doing well in this heat. I'm gonna die.
Well, depending on where you are, maybe it's like
everywhere.
If you're
sucks.
In Ireland, I don't know what it's like over there right now.
I feel like Ireland, it's probably 70 degrees, but they're just like, this is the hottest it's ever been.
Yeah.
Whenever
you should do an Irish accent right now.
I would not do that to our Irish listeners. I've done it before. And I'm going to reel it back in. Okay. Whenever I listen to my multitude of British podcasts, and they're always like, oh, it's a heat wave. And I look it up, and I'm like, I would kill for that. I'm dying.
It's like 60 degrees.
The other day, I went for a run. I only made it a mile and a half, and I literally was like, what if I died?
No, today I walked out, and it was so... Why are we talking about the weather? We're like
know.
So... I was just going to say, it was like, it felt like I was in like a jar of Jello. It was just like gross.
It makes me want to like consume summer sticky content. Do you know what I mean? Like
what's that?
Like where it's like the humidity is like a character almost, like in Miller's Girl.
Oh yes, like a Southern Gothic.
Yes, I've been reading. I started The Guest by Emma Cline, and like literally the first sentence was just about like how humid it is in August. I said I'll buy this immediately. I don't even know the plot.
Sometimes I really crave like certain settings, and typically it's like a movie that takes place in like a small southern town. It's like a horror movie, probably an exorcism is going on. Like that's the kind of thing I want. But I have been I feel like during the summer especially, I really start to crave like Lost, and I've recently been in my Lost era,
which you can tell that they're on a set because sometimes
no, they're not. They're totally filming in Hawaii.
I know, but like they're all, like doing a movie or a show. You know what I mean?
Because they have makeup on.
Yes,
yeah.
We've talked about this. Their armpits are shaved.
No, Kate is.
Why
like,
are they not
wearing
sweating?
Foundation and like
nobody's sweating enough.
Blush, like she has like actual makeup on.
Nobody has enough acne. Nobody has enough like hairiness.
Yeah, the hairiness definitely not.
And some of them, the men look a little bit sweaty. Rarely do you see the women look very sweaty.
No, Jack is always sweaty though.
Yeah, but he's doing all the work.
I know. It's really made me want to watch. I texted you the other day about the show Duster on on HBO. I really want to watch that now.
I don't know how I feel about it. I watched the trailer and I was just kind of like, meh. I can only see him as Sawyer.
I feel like he's Sawyer-esque though in this.
Okay. Which I used to think, even when I was 10 years old, I was like, damn, Sawyer.
I'm back in like love with him again. Like he's so
his little nicknames. I'm like, give me one.
And he does that. I just saw an interview with him for this show. Again, I'm like in my Sawyer era right now.
Love that.
And he was like, he says he actually gives people nicknames because he does that in the new show. And they're like, it takes place in Baltimore, and the main character's from Baltimore, and he's like, he calls her Baltimore, and the interviewer was like, I feel like Baltimore is like the new Freckles. And he was like, I don't realize I do that.
We should give each other nicknames. What's the name of that cat in, the white cat in the cartoon, the Aristocats?
Marie.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's just a name.
You would call me Marie. You could call me like Blondie.
Yeah, but that feels too obvious.
It would be like a kind of rude too. I wouldn't care, but that's like a nickname. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Marie. What would I call you?
I don't know. Stumbler.
No, that'd be so... Stumbles.
Yesterday, I accidentally knocked a Poppy onto my laptop a little bit, and then I was like, oh shit, and Chris was like watching me, and then I went to go clean it up, and then I knocked the Poppy over again onto my phone, and it was like, I was like, that was a wild minute and a half, and Chris goes, it was 20 seconds. It was... Anyway, so that was our Sunday evening. But today...
Our Monday evening.
Our Monday evening, we are here to talk Sabrina.
Yes.
Not the witch, but the carpenter.
Okay, so with all this, so obviously we're going to get into like, I'll just spoiler alert, we're going to be talking about her new album cover. But there's been a lot of and as well as her new song, but there's been a lot of criticism. And I love whenever Sabrina Carpenter gets criticism, there's always a tweet that's like, another Carpenter who got crucified or whatever. And it always makes me laugh.
Also, we should say at the top of this that our timestamps are always posted in our episode descriptions and on our Instagram at Poppin' In Podcast. So if you don't want a spoiler, although this isn't like a show or anything, so like this is just real life.
Well, just in general, we'll have some spoilers, I think.
But other things we usually say spoilers or whatever, you can skip through, look at the timestamps, whatever. But back to Sabrina.
Okay, so Sabrina Carpenter, we love her.
If you don't know her,
yes,
she's a little blonde woman.
Wait, today I was listening to, I think I was just listening to Espresso in the car, and for some reason the profile picture for her song that came up on the screen was a picture of her from when she was probably like 15. It was like a very old photo, and I was like, why'd they use this like IMDb photo from probably when she was on like Girl Meets World or whatever? It was so funny. So she just released a new song called Man-Child, and first of all, how do you feel about it?
It was fine.
It's fine to me.
I listened to it, but I think I feel that way about a lot of music, like pop music, where I listened to it the first time, I was like, this is fine.
And I feel that way with her music, where it's like sometimes I hear it first and I'm like, whatever, but then it like grows on me.
Yeah, like I did not like Please, Please, Please. Like the first listen, I was like, ugh. And then I listened to it like...
Then I started listening probably
now
10
I know
times a
every
day.
word.
And it sounds similar to me, like, and she's gotten kind of a lot of, not criticism, but there's been a lot of, like, commentary on, like, how this song kind of just sounds like all her songs, and everyone's like, yeah, that's typically what happens with artists, like, their songs sound alike, because they sang it, they wrote it, whatever. I love her music video, though, because, like, her music videos are always very, like, this music video is so cinematic, and it really...
I didn't see the video.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, so you really have to, like... So she's you just have to watch it. You'll really like it.
Okay.
But the thing is, I feel like she could really be in, like a 1970s horror movie.
Yeah, I would love that. I don't know what her acting is like, but I was just thinking, like, I would love to live in, let me finish this whole sentence.
Okay.
I would love to live in Sabrina Carpenter aesthetic.
Yeah, no, me too. But what I was going to say was, like, her...
Like, that world. I want that filter on my life. I want that... You know what I mean?
Yes. But I was just saying, though, I think, like, she makes, like, great, like, facial expressions.
Yeah.
And, like, there's, like, a part where the guy is, like, kissing up her neck, and she's just like, oh... Like, she just, like, is making such a great facial expression.
The thing I love about Sabrina Carpenter is she is not I think, typical pop star in that I think she's... kind of brilliant and knows exactly what image she's creating and what she's doing.
And we're going to get into that. But I think just like, I just want to get this out really quick. So I was just going to say too, I want to see her in a 70s horror movie. Mm-hmm. And I was saying this to you this weekend.
A24.
Yes. Like, but it reminded
me
like if she were like an X or something.
Yeah.
Like
I could absolutely
she
see
just would
her
so fit
in
into
X,
that vibe. But yes, and I think also the thing about Sabrina Carpenter that's really interesting is her music is really humorous.
Yeah.
Like, her lyrics are always
very
humorous.
Funny.
She's funny.
I love listening to when she did the concert, her little, like, what do they call it, like, chaotic outros or whatever. Mm-hmm. I listened to so many of them because I was like, this is clever.
No, the tour was, like, super creative. Like, whoever her creative team is great.
Yeah.
And so, I think we're kind of going to get into this a little bit now, like, about how, yes, you're right. Like, I think she knows there's something satirical about her stuff. Yeah. Like, she knows what image she's creating. And I think there's always a plan behind everything she does.
Yes.
That being said, the album cover of her new album, Man's Best Friend, was just, like, released. So it's a photo of her kneeling on the ground while basically you just see a guy, like, out of frame, just a man, like, holding her by her hair. And the album is called Man's Best Friend, so it's, like, implying that she's, like, a dog, basically. Yeah. And everybody, like, it got a lot of criticism because, like, everybody saw it, and a lot of people
are freaking out.
Yeah, a lot of people were kind of just like, oh, like, okay, interesting. And I think a lot of the criticism is that it was just, like, maybe, like, a step back in feminism. Meanwhile, like, a lot of her music is very, like, not man-hating, but just kind of, like, you know... Yeah. She's for the girl. The thing I always say about Sabrina Carpenter is that I've never felt like her sexiness or her image is for men. I've always felt like it's for the girls. Like, it's very girly. It, like, makes me feel very, like, I love like just like
because here's the thing, I've actually never heard a man be like, wow, Sabrina Carpenter's so hot. I always hear it from women because I think she's dressing for the female gaze.
That's what I'm saying. And so I think that's kind of the image she's always had. And so then when people saw this album cover, it was kind of just like, oh.
But here's my thing is, one, I don't think it's that promiscuous overall. She's just a hot little number, you know? And two, I think, like, we're making this judgment when it's like we haven't seen the rest of the album. Like, I think it's going to end up being kind of a satirical commentary. I think even without the rest of it, it's kind of a little bit of a satirical commentary. I don't think she's, like, saying, like, oh, like, women are dogs to men. I think she's just, like, making an interesting artistic point. But people are freaking out.
And I think, and so I do agree, I think, like, there will be... And this is what a lot of people are saying, too, that, like, just wait for it to come out because I think she is going to be making a statement that's not that because she's just, like, her lyrics and, like, her music is, like, tends to be, like, kind of satirical. And so I think it will also be satirical. But I'm going to do something a little bit early on, which we don't normally do, but I'm going to read the question of the week answers, like, now, just to kind of, like, start off the conversation a little bit, because we did get some very divisive answers.
Yes, and we always post a question of the week every week to our Instagram, so follow us and answer at Poppin' In Podcast.
Yes, and this week we asked, what are your thoughts on Sabrina's Man's Best Friend cover? And we got, like, a lot of interesting answers. So Emily said... bad vibe for current political climate. Tanya said, I hate it, heart. Am I being friend that's too woke? Let me know. Not one song of hers warrants this. Kelsey said, people are too serious. I think it's going to be her pulling her hair or Jenna Ortega, which I thought was interesting. Huh. Like, maybe it'll be, like, somebody else. Because I guess you actually can't see who's pulling her hair.
Right.
You just see, like, a hand. Let's see. Kelly said, I love a good hair pull every now and again, but his form is repulsive. Courtney said, I'm obsessed with it. Who doesn't love a little bit of kinky? And Eric said, I do feel as though it's different for her. I can understand why her fans might feel some kind of way about it. It's sexy in a way that her other stuff wasn't. Maybe it's her evolution. And he said, as a non-fan, I don't frown upon it, but it doesn't make me feel much different about her either.
The thing is, it reminds me almost of, have you seen that cover? I forget what magazine it was, but when Britney Spears was, like, when she was still a minor, and she did this, like, photo shoot where it was very, like, Lolita-esque, where she was in her bedroom, very much like there's, like, stuffed toys around her, but it's, like, very, like, sexy. And again, she was very young. And so that is interesting to think of, like, almost over 20 years later, where now we have this other, like, kind of overtly sexual thing happening. But whereas, like, in Britney Spears' case, it's interesting because, you know, she was young and I don't think most of her image she had any control over. Yeah. Whereas I think, like, Sabrina Carpenter is an auteur of her image. Yeah. And I think she knows exactly what she's doing.
I think so, too. I think... I definitely see both sides of it. I don't think it's, like, that deep. Like, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I'm not, like, freaking out over it. I'm interested to see, like, what the album is. Like, you know. But I think it's interesting because, so some people are kind of, somebody tweeted, does she have a personality outside of sex? And she responded and said, girl, yes, and it is good. And she said in an article, in a Rolling Stone article, that came out June 12th. It's always so funny to me when people complain. They're like, all she does is sing about this, but those are the songs that you've made popular. Clearly you love sex. You're obsessed with it.
I don't think she is. I think she's created this character of herself that is creating, like, an interesting discussion around, like, female sexuality.
Yeah.
And like, if the guy were doing this...
It's funny because I think people's comments on, like, is all she obsessed with is sex... She kind of pointed out, like, a lot of that probably comes from, like, the Juno song where she does, like, a new sex position every show. So she'll be like, have you ever tried this one? And she does, like, a new... And it's usually funny. Like, it's never, like... It's never super graphic. It's, like, usually funny. And I think she was kind of saying the thing is, like, that's the thing that goes viral. Yeah. But that I have so much more music than that.
A lot of her music is about being a woman who enjoys sex and men not being able to kind of, like... Yeah. Like, just, rise to the occasion. Quite literally. Yeah. And it's interesting because, like, I just... Actually, I don't know. I had a
But I think, so in people's, like, kind of to play, like, the other side of that is, like, I think people are saying, though, like, that is maybe, like, that's why people were surprised by the album cover, because it was like, oh, that now feels like the opposite. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, by her, like, being, like, a dog on the ground, like, you know, guy, like, pulling her hair. But I think, like, you know,
I think it's I do think it's a commentary on something. I don't think she's like,
I think it will be.
Like, I don't think she's trying to be like, women are dogs to men. You know what I mean? Or like, women are like, need to like obey or whatever. I think she's like making a commentary on sexuality of like women maybe like, I think if you look at that and all you can see is she is a like obedient dog to a man, and not see that she's like, I guess, like, making a commentary that women are historically, like, found sexy when they're being obedient to men, I think, like, you're missing the big picture.
I mean, yeah, I don't think you would, like, see that and immediately think that, though. I think you would look at it and be like, oh, this is, like, a woman in a sexual position.
Right. And one thing I do like about Sabrina Carpenter, and I think, like, what maybe this album is trying to do in her whole, like, persona in general, it's almost like, you know, when... like, she's taking these, like, very traditional, like, ideas of sexuality and, like, what's hot or whatever, and she's reclaiming it for I think, women.
Yeah.
Like, again, I don't hear a lot of men talking about her and how hot she is, even though she is very hot. Like, it's always women being like, oh my god, like, Sabrina Carpenter is so hot, like, she's so sexy, whatever.
Yeah.
And... it's almost like, you know, like a reclamation of, like, language, where, you know how, like, traditionally, like, if you call someone a bitch, it's like, oh, that's a bad thing. But then women kind of, like, retook that, and then they were like, bitch, guess what? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Where I feel like Sabrina Carpenter is doing the same thing with, like, women's perceived sexuality. And again, if a man posted the same thing in terms of, like, he's in a sexual position, would he be getting as much criticism for it?
Yeah.
Would he be getting as much hate? I think also, like, it's a very damned if you do, damned if you don't type of thing. She's too sexual, that's bad. She's not sexual enough, that's not good. All of these artists have to go through that. And it's interesting because I really think, like, Sabrina Carpenter has her pulse on it, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, I think she knows what she's doing.
Yeah.
I trust her.
I think so, too. I think that is ultimately what's going to happen. And I think, like, people kind of are seeing that side, too, where what you were just saying, where I think there's a plan with this. But I think people just at first were like, oh.
Yeah. And it makes me mad, like, that person being like, do you have a personality outside of sex? It's like, just because she is a sexual person and is open about it doesn't mean she can't have other facets of her personality.
It's funny because I don't even really think of her as, like, that sexual of a person. Again, it's a lot of it is just,
I think
like,
of her
really...
as being very funny.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just really humorous.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just... it's interesting to me... and we'll talk about this when we get into the Call Her Daddy thing, but, like, you know, they had, like, a whole thing where it's, like, they started out being very sexual, and then people were like, well, why aren't you sexual anymore? And it's like, okay, well, you can have, like, different parts of your personality, but I feel like women just, or people just want to peg women into one thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, I can be a sexual person, and I can also be, like, very witty and a musician, and I can also, like, stand up for women's rights. And I think I took this quote from a New York Times article that I think summed it up really well, where they said, this album slots itself too neatly into the age-old chasm between pro-sex feminists and those who feel women shouldn't participate in their own subjugation. And I think that's exactly what it's doing. I think it's just a very interesting talking point. I think it's a interesting, like, and it's so easy, I think, for women to hate on women in, like, this day and age, you know, and I'm a culprit of it. Like, I've done it before, but give her a chance. Let her cook.
Well, there is that thing, too, of, like, what is feminism? And sometimes people, like, if, you know, people are looking at this as, like, a step back in feminism, and it's like, well, isn't feminism, like, a choice? Yeah. You know? Like,
feminism
their choice
is like a spectrum, you know? Like, if I decide to stay home and take care of my kids, that's also a feminist choice.
Yeah.
It's what works for you, and that's... feminism is having that choice to be what you want to be.
I definitely see both sides of the argument. Like, I don't think it's, like, that deep. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm going to listen to it either way. I'm excited to see the music. But I also see why people would first kind of be like, oh, like,
It's interesting.
Yeah.
And I think, like, we're falling into her hands the album's not even out yet,
wanting
right?
to start a conversation.
And everyone's talking about it. I also love, this was like a month or so ago. Did you ever see the pictures where she got a new dog? And it was like she was walking him in the park. And it's, obviously, I realize now, like, such a, like, paparazzi shoot because she's wearing, it's like, little, like, kitten heels with fur on top. Yeah. Like, she looked, and I realize now, I'm like, that makes sense. She got a new dog. Her album's gonna be called Man's Best Friend. Mm-hmm. You know, like, it's all, I was like, okay, she's the hottest person I've ever seen walk a dog.
Yeah. She has got a great aesthetic. Like, she has really figured out the, how do you feel about the, like, Lolita thing?
The thing is, I don't get it from her as much as I do maybe, like
Lana Del Rey really had
Ariana
that.
Grande, I think, used to pull in a very Lolita look.
That is true. I think Lana Del Rey, like, romanticized Lolita. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think Ariana Grande, that's kind of just, like, her
aesthetic,
whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm curious what, like, you think of it, because it's easy to be like, oh, it's an aesthetic, but then when you really think about what Lolita is, it's kind of interesting.
It is, and also, like, is it a Lolita aesthetic? I never really thought of it as that. I always just thought, like, oh, she's just very girly.
Who?
Sabrina Carpenter.
I would say, like, in her new music video, I was getting those vibes, but I don't really know. I mean, not necessarily. It doesn't, like, bother me, like, because I mean, she's an adult, so it's whatever, but
it bothers, I think the fetishization of younger women, but, like, the idea of a younger woman does, like...
Yes, and I think Lana Del Rey, like, I think when she sang about it, kind of, like, it wasn't, like, in a good way. Like, she was talking about, like, the bad part of it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think she was, like, romanticizing it necessarily. I don't know. It's interesting.
I think, like... So I think Sabrina Carpenter, and I think honestly, like, a lot of, like, pop stars these days are interesting because I don't think they fall into one category or the other. Yeah. Like, again, if you think of, like, the early 2000s, it was like, oh, you have, like, or even in the 60s, it's like you have a Jackie Kennedy and you have a Marilyn Monroe. Yeah. In the early 2000s, you have a Britney Spears and you have, like, a Jessica Simpson or whatever. Mm-hmm. You know? Well, they're kind of, like, two sides of the same coin, but still, you know what I mean?
I'm just glad that, like, we have so many, like, female pop stars right now. Yeah. I feel like we are now in an era where currently there's no, like, guy singer that I'm, like, obsessed with. I feel like I only listen to women pop stars now.
Male singers that I'm, like, not obsessed with, but that I really listen to are mainly, like, rappers.
Yeah.
And then, like, even though there's obviously a lot of men out there with, like, good voices, but they're not, like, pop stars. Whereas, like, if you look back at, like, the early 2000s or even, like, the 80s, you have, you know, like, George Michael and, like, those sorts of things. And I don't know who that would be now. Or even, like, a David Bowie or, like, a Justin Timberlake or
Justin Bieber. Did you see his video from this weekend where he's like, you're not, he's talking to paparazzi. I have been quoting it all day where he's yelling at paparazzi and he's like, you're not clocking that I'm standing on business.
What does that mean?
It makes no sense.
Anytime I see a video of him, I'm like, it must be really interesting to live with him. Like, I don't, this sounds cheesy, like, I don't want to say my heart goes out to him, but I'm like, he probably is, like, his life is, I don't know, his psyche.
My heart kind of goes out to Haley because I just am like, I'm like slightly concerned. Like, he just seems
he gives
mean
me kind
to her.
Of Kanye vibes a little bit, like a young white Kanye.
He just he just went off on somebody. He showed text between him and some friend. He didn't put who the friend was, but it was text he was exchanging with somebody who was, like, kind of, like, putting him in his place and was, like, you know, being honest with him. And he was just, like, the way he was texting him, and also the way that he was posting about it gave Kanye. Like, it was like he was having, like, a breakdown. And, like, I wouldn't be surprised if he did go through similar things that Kanye does because, again, like, just somebody who gets young too famous that young, like, it just, you're not going to be in a good, like, place.
And we know, like, all the stuff that went on with Diddy. We know, like, probably just the surface level.
I think,
like,
and I
allegedly.
I just feel like he's just, like, mean to Haley. Whenever I see anything.
Well, that's what when we were talking about it, and I actually went and I, like, listened to, like, the 7-part series or whatever. Yeah. And I was like, nobody's talking, like, everyone's like, oh my God, Haley's so obsessed with him. I'm like, nobody's talking about, like,
how he treats her.
It doesn't matter if he's in love with her or not. Like, you shouldn't just talk to somebody that way,
No.
especially like someone that you are supposed to care about. Like, it's not. I don't like, people were making fun of her the whole thing where he like leaves her on a skateboard, which was like a little bit funny, but I was just like, this seems really cruel.
One time he jumps out of the car and like the door like closes on her.
Yeah,
and he's just always doing stuff like that. And I'm like, I can't imagine being married to him. I know at one point that was every girl's dream.
Yeah,
but like realistically, imagine now like being in a relationship with him.
I just think he's had a lot of trauma, and I just don't.
Yeah.
I don't know if he has like. I don't know.
And then imagine just constantly being compared to like the girl that he dated when they were in high school, like when they were teenagers.
Yeah, that is so crazy. I think about that all the time. Like, she's a child with him. They've been married for years. Selena Gomez is getting married and is going to probably have children and whatever, and people will still probably be talking about like Justin Bieber and Selena Gomez. Jelena. Yeah.
No, sorry. I almost said Helena. Huston.
But anyways, I think like, I don't know. I think the pop stars that we have now are more interesting culturally, because I think they have more of a say in what they do versus maybe like 15 to 20 years ago. And I think that's interesting to see like the work that they produce.
Yeah.
But so speaking of another controversial sort of female creator, I watched the Call Her Alex documentary.
I think it's funny that they called it Call Her Alex. Like, what else would you call her documentary? Do you know what I mean? So I will say, going into this, I did say I was like, I'm kind of watching this as a hater, and I will say it gave me a new perspective on Alex Cooper. I think we've talked about this on the podcast before, but I used to be like a big fan of Call Her Daddy when it was Alex Cooper and Sophia Franklin. I remember I listened to it all the time going to grad school. I thought they were hilarious together. And then when they had like a huge falling out, again, we've talked about this on the podcast, they had a huge falling out, and then Alex ended up getting the IP for Call Her Daddy, and she basically has like taken the like podcast in a different direction, where it used to be very like sex and raunchy and like it was very funny all the time, and now it's more of like an interview, like more like of a serious podcast type thing. Yeah, like she interviews Michelle Obama.
Yeah, exactly.
Or no,
Kamala Harris.
Cut that. Please cut that.
But and so I was very much like, I didn't hate Alex Cooper before. I just didn't like the way that like the media portrayed like Sophia Franklin, where I think like both of them were probably wrong in the situation, but because Alex had the platform still, when their whole like fallout happened, she was able to get like her side of the story out first. And if you listen to both sides of the story of like what happened, which it's a very long saga.
Yes. And I still feel like no matter who was in the right necessarily, I just still feel for Sophia, because imagine like not only like you get the short end of the stick out of the deal. Yeah. Everybody hates you. Yeah. Everybody knows that you got the short end of the stick.
Yeah. Because, I mean, so the most recent thing, well, not most recent, but Alex sold Call Her Daddy to SiriusXM for $125 million. Oh. So she sold it to Spotify, which at the time was like the largest podcast.
60 million?
Yeah, and then she recently sold it to SiriusXM, which I think is interesting because so in this new documentary,
would you rather have it on SiriusXM than Spotify?
I guess I'd rather have it
with that deal. Yeah. But that's interesting.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting when they were talking about this documentary, like, they portray the podcast as, like, very feminist, like, it's for women, and they talk about how, like, Alex is, like, such a trailblazer in, like, female podcasters, which is true, and they show clips of, like, Howard Stern and how he would, like, interview, like, Heather Locklear or whatever, and he'd be like, I would love to picture you naked or something like that. And it's so interesting because
Howard Stern was crazy.
He was.
That show was crazy.
Whenever I think of SiriusXM, I find it synonymous in my head with Howard Stern.
Whenever I think of just radio, I think of Howard Stern.
So then I just find it interesting that they're like, oh, it's such like a feminist thing. And it's like, oh, well, now she's going to be at the same network as Howard Stern, of which they used a clip from his, like, radio show to be like, look at all these, like, misogynist like radio hosts. I just thought that was interesting. But so I'll be honest, I everyone really loved this documentary. I found it to be like a little bit boring at certain points because, so I understand that there has to be some sort of plot structure in it. It's on Hulu. It's a 2-part documentary, but like it basically is following her like first live tour and like the setup. And some people really love that. I found it so boring. I was like, I'm not going to see this show. Like, I don't care. And again, I'm going to preface this by saying like I have good things to say about Alex Cooper, but I also like Fair Balance was viewing it like this is a documentary like made for and by Alex Cooper.
Right.
Which, you know, people do that all the time. I don't blame her for that. But it very much felt like a love letter to herself, kind of. Which, again, people do documentaries like this all the time. But some of it, like, there's this whole thing where she's getting ready for, like, her show. They're like the show is tomorrow, and the guy who does like he runs the whole show, he's the guy who's like, okay, Alex, go, dancers, go, lights, go, is like about to quit. He was like, I'm gonna quit, I'm burnt out, and the show is tomorrow. I think his name was like,
do you ever think like, thank God they
John
got this on camera?
Yeah, well, so here's the thing, she's like going to look for him, and she's like, I've got to talk to him, and she's like, okay, no cameras please, when she finds him, but they're like all mic'd up,
right?
The cameras,
so you can hear the conversation.
You can see like
the
part of her.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, okay, and then she's like, he's like, you know, there's like some toxic stuff going on here, and she's like, well, I wasn't aware of that, and I'm so sorry, and whatever. And then she like calls everyone like around, and she was like, I just want everyone to know that they're like really appreciative for what they did here, and if that isn't like conveyed, then what? And I was just kind of like, okay,
what was the toxic stuff that was going on?
They didn't say. They never said. I was like, okay,
how interesting.
And it's just, I think,
how
because
enthralling.
A part of that is like, I think an image thing where like after the Sophia Franklin stuff, I think sometimes she came off as being like really controlling or like really like business, as in Alex Cooper did. And I was like, maybe this is like her trying to be, because I was like, what was the point of this whole thing?
And I'm curious,
besides making her look good.
Yeah, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on this, but another thing that I heard about from this documentary was how people were surprised by how involved her husband is in all of her stuff. So it almost feels like she doesn't have a lot, like her husband seems to have like a lot of control over things.
It was interesting. So also, I didn't realize like how scripted her show was going to be. Like she's literally like reading from a script, like reading it over. And it's interesting because I learned today, so she met her husband like on a business call for the podcast back when it was still like, we're doing like sex, this is like whatever. And she talks about like, she's like, oh, I put on like this personality to be like this. She's like, obviously that's not really like fully who I am all the time in like the original like run of the podcast. And he was like, yeah, we're not really interested in like kind of whatever this is that you're selling for the podcast. And she was like, oh, okay. And then she just like went to be like her normal self. And then her now husband was kind of like, wait, what just happened there? And she was like, well, I'm not going to put on my podcast personality for you if you're not going to like buy it.
Yeah.
And then he was like, you know, they obviously fell in love and whatever, but he was also just like, okay, I think people are more interested in that. Like you can't keep doing this like sex thing, whatever. And so it's interesting because she portrays it in the documentary as it being like her wanting to naturally progress. She's like, I got tired of this like really sexy like personality where all I cared about was sex. But then it was weird because so she does like interviews with Kamala Harris, but also during this live show, she was talking about the Gluck Gluck 9000, which is like how like her thing about getting a blowjob or whatever. And I was just like, I don't understand what you're trying to do. And I also am curious, like how much of it is his influence that you're like saying, I wanted this.
So I also think, because I go back to what you said last time we talked about it, that I thought was interesting, which was that like Sophia was kind of the humor of between the two of them, like, so probably made more of the sex jokes and was just like overall kind of more outrageous than Alex was. So maybe Alex probably knew that like just by herself it wasn't enough. So she was like, okay, now I need to pivot to like just serious, because that's more. Now I'm not saying she was like only serious, like I'm sure she was kind of funny too, but like it sounds like that wasn't her area, so it just wasn't as funny by herself. And even like she was saying some of her jokes like that she was going to say during the live show. And again, I think she is good at like what she does. I think her podcast, like, again, I used to love it, but I just don't find her funny on her own. Yeah.
Like, I just don't think her jokes are very funny. She's very, like, try-hard funny.
I know. I never hear her make jokes, actually. When I hear people on her podcast, it's just her laughing and going, she really reminds me of somebody we know. I don't want to, like, say it on the show right now, but, like, she kind of reminds me of, like, like somebody that will just like their humor, it's not genuine. They're just repeating what you're saying, going, oh, like, oh yeah, like that. Like, it's kind of like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like they're actually being funny. They're just laughing and repeating what the other person is saying and going, oh my gosh. Like, and it's just like not that genuine to me. Whenever I hear her in interviews, I'm like, it's never her, like as an interviewer, I'm always picturing like anyone could probably do that, what she's doing. So I always think about the people that are being interviewed by her. I'm like, do they think she's a good interviewer?
Jane Fonda's apparently said she was the best interviewer she's ever had, but I don't know, because I think people are just like going to be nice to her because she has such a big platform.
That's what I think.
But so in this documentary, the parts that I found more interesting were like about her childhood, where like she said, you know, she loved making content. She's just like the same age as us, so she grew up in the age of like YouTube is coming out. We have like home cameras, and her parents, like, she literally got a makeshift green screen, and they show all these like videos of her and her friend Lauren, who you find out is now a producer on the show. Like, they've been lifelong friends. And like her other friends, like, they're just making all these funny videos. So you can tell, like, you can see like, okay, this child ended up here. Like, that makes sense. This is what she has been wanting to do clearly her whole life, is to like edit, like make movies, make like little, like to make some sort of like media component thing. And I really loved seeing that. And I also loved, like, you know, she was a natural redhead, and I will say she was like, I got really bullied by boys, which I think is interesting, because she's such like a sex figure now, and she seems very confident around men. Yeah. But so I think it was interesting to me, because I was like, okay, you're from a very like upper middle class childhood. So like, it's like sometimes, you know, when as a journalist, sometimes like, you know, you try to find like, what's the hard part of this person's background. It's like, she was like, people told me because I was a ginger, I had no soul. And I was kind of like, okay, said every ginger ever, but whatever.
Was that like supposed to be sad? Was that like a sad?
Like she was saying, she was like, I got bullied, boys didn't pay attention to me, whatever. I was like, yeah, same. I got called Unistache.
I think this is kind of I'll let you sort of finish the whole thing, I guess, before I like go into this. But my whole like view on this documentary was just like, to me, your life does not seem interesting enough to have a documentary.
I am curious. Yeah, I am. The stuff where it's like she was at home, like, again, she's like preparing for the show, I was like truly genuinely bored by. I was just like,
and even just the stuff she's taught, and I'm not talking about the college yet, but just like the stuff when she's a kid, I just am kind of like, okay, like a lot of kids like made home videos. Like, I did that as a kid. Like, and a lot of kids were bullied by boys and maybe said like, you know, gingers have no soul. Like, I just don't know if that's like enough for a documentary. I think her life is interesting in that she got to where she is. She's obviously a very successful person. Yeah. But I just don't know if right now we needed a documentary.
I know. I would love to see this documentary in like 10 years.
10 or 20. When she's not even like really... It just, again, maybe she probably has too much control over this documentary.
Yes, and like, again, people do that all the time, but like, I think about like the Selena Gomez documentary, you know, that she put out. I'm like, well, at least like Selena Gomez has been like famous. Yeah,
we're at the point where we're kind of ready to hear her story.
Yes, and I think like that one actually had like some bad portrayals of her, you know? I thought like that was like the most realistic one I've seen, whereas this, like, it just, they do this thing where they interview like women from the crowd, and it's all like just... It's not like, oh, I'm just here to like see my favorite podcaster. They're like, I think like she's like a feminist icon, and like she's like done all of this for women, blah blah blah. And I was just like, okay, interesting. Yeah. And I think I will say, like, her having as much videos as she did probably was like a documentarian's dream. They were probably like, oh hell yeah, like. And it's interesting because she did go like. She had a vlog before Call Her Daddy that wasn't, like, really successful on her own. Yeah. And, I mean, like, she would post vlogs or whatever, and, like, they showed clips on it. I watched some of it when I was still, like, a fan of the show, and it just wasn't for me. Like, her humor just isn't for me. It's very, like, try-hard humor. Yeah. But, like, you know, be creative. Do what you want. Like, people clearly love it. But I think it's interesting because I think, like, if she had started Call Her Daddy by herself without Sophia, I don't think it would be as popular as it is, because again, when I listened to it, it was the dynamic of them playing off of each other that I really liked. And I thought like Sophia was the funny one. Like, Alex was funny every now and then with her stories, but again, like, she just kind of annoyed annoyed me a little bit, even like before all the drama happened. But it's interesting. So you asked me if they talk about the like split in the show, and I was like, yeah, they kind of have to. Like, here's the thing, if they didn't talk about it, that would be like weird.
No, I would expect them to, but my question was like, do they interview Sophia? I'm assuming not. And
no,
then if
and
not, like,
they had like so I actually, this kind of annoyed me. They played one clip of like Sophia's voice on it. It's from their very first episode, and it was basically like the first whatever of the first episode where Sophia's like, yeah, like, and I'm just here like riding Alex's coattails or whatever.
That's not fair. I think,
and I'm like, yeah, from the first episode, and I think it's, again, it just, I will say, like, I know we had this discussion where you're like, is this going to happen to us? And I think, like, the big difference is they remind me a lot of, like, Giggly Squad, which is Paige DeSorbo and Hannah Berner, where just, like, the dynamic, which also reminds me of us, where it's, like, one who's, like, very girly and very, like, whatever, and the other one who's, like, I've got stains on my shirt. And I'm kind of, like, and...
Are the two of them like that, too?
Yeah.
Which one is which?
Like, Sophia Franklin's, like, very, like, girly and, like, you know, like...
Oh, I would have thought, like, Alex... I guess Alex
Cooper is more, like, tomboyish.
Okay.
You know, like, she is girly, but she, like, is more tomboyish.
Yeah.
But I think the difference between them, and also between us, is, like, they weren't friends before they started the podcast. Like, they moved in together for a few months, and then, like, Alex was like, I want to start a podcast. Do you want to do it with me? And then she was like, sure. What also annoyed me is how they presented it. They interviewed Dave Portnoy, who owns Barstool Sports, which is the first one that gave them, like, their podcast deal. And I didn't know, apparently they released one episode, and he DM'd Alex and was like, hey, this is Dave Portnoy. I'm interested in, like, hearing about your show. And he said that he signed a contract with Alex, like, they negotiated the contract or whatever, and then she was like, by the way, like, you have to, like, Sophia's also in this, like, she's the co-host, so you have, and he was like, oh, I didn't even know Sophia existed. And I was like, that's such a stupid...
And they said that in the documentary.
He said that in the documentary. I was like, that's kind of a stupid thing to say. How would, if you listened to the episode, how would you not know she existed? But it also is shitty on...
that's on their... Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, it also doesn't make Alex look good, because then it makes it sound like she's, like, marketing this thing that she's made with this person and not mentioning them.
But that's that's twisting the narrative to make it look like she had to be like, yeah, Sophia, like, is here too. But, like, she edited the show, I think, at first.
She still does.
The podcast?
Yeah. Alex Cooper.
She herself edits the podcast?
I think so, because she's, like, very specific about it. She talked about it, like, she mentioned it briefly in the podcast. But, I mean, she obviously has, like, a whole team now.
I would think so, yeah. But anyway, between, like, when it was just her and Sophia, like, starting off, she was kind of the one that, like, did a lot of the, like, work, like, the physical, work with it.
And she says it was her idea, which... When they talked about it on the podcast before all the drama, they made it sound like it was a joint idea.
But here's the thing. Like, this is where I just feel... And so they're twisting it for her to be like, oh, like, you know, like, Dave didn't even know Sophia existed. Which, again, like, if you listen to the podcast, you hear two voices. How do you not know she doesn't exist? But, like, that's her narrative. And then the thing is, like, you look at it and, like, they were getting a shitty deal from Barstool. Like, that was not a good deal what they had.
No, I think it was a good deal for they bought it after the first episode. It was $70,000 for 3 years. They didn't know how big it was going to become, you know?
No.
But I think, like, it was smart of them to renegotiate the deal.
Yeah, and so, but I don't blame Sophia for being like, yeah, we are worth more than that.
Yeah.
And then they just were, I think how I've heard that Alex phrases in I don't think she, like, talks shit about Sophia in the documentary, but she just phrases that, like, we were not on the same page, basically. Yeah.
And I think it's interesting because when they talk about it, it's just very clear, like, Alex, this is something she had always wanted to do. Maybe not podcasting, but, like, she wanted to be, like, a content creator. And so it was very smart of her, like, you know, Dave Portnoy gave him a deal where he's like, finish out the year and you'll have your IP back. And I don't think, like, Sophia Franklin had ever really thought about that, maybe. Like, because that's not what she was...
Well, she was just listening to that guy, right?
Yeah, her boyfriend at the time. But also, like, you know, she's not thinking... She hasn't spent her whole life, like, making content and wanting to be, like, a creator. So she's just like, okay, well, we can get more money over here. And Alex is like, no. And she was right. The IP is more valuable.
Yeah. But you know what sucks is, like... Okay, that was just a bat. She shouldn't have listened to that guy. They're not even together anymore.
I know.
Like, imagine, I guess I just feel so much like, I just feel so bad for her.
Yeah.
Like, she made a stupid decision whatever. But I'm just like, imagine being her between the two of them. Like, I think I just would be like, how do you even, like, live your life every day?
And to know, like, she got, like, this $125 million deal.
Yeah.
She married, like, this man of her dreams that she very much always portrays as, like, they have this amazing relationship with her 2 little, like, golden doodles in this multi-million-dollar home. And, like, I don't think...
And everyone loves her, and everyone loves her podcast.
Yeah, and I just... Again, I would sue, but I guess she doesn't have any grounds to sue. But... I just think, like, again, I don't think it was Alex's fault. I don't think it was Sophia's fault. I think they were both at fault, and I think they were both in the right in certain ways.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it also was 2 inexperienced women just being like, we've never done brand deals and negotiations.
And one just listened to the right person and the other didn't.
Yeah, exactly.
I think, what if she sued? What would she sue?
I don't know.
What would be? I mean, I agree with you. I would feel the need to sue, but I don't know what she could sue. Maybe if they said the wrong thing on this, although it's a Hulu documentary, I'm sure they have great lawyers. But like, if they said something on there that she could be like, you're basically blasting my name, because that's what sucks too. Is like, Alex gets this documentary. Sophia's never going to get a Hulu documentary.
Right.
And so it just sucks. Like, again, she doesn't have the platform.
Again, that's why I said when it first happened, it sucked because everyone immediately hated Sophia because Alex still had the platform, literally the feed, to put out her side of the story. And it's like, Sophia didn't have that. Like, how, you know, she didn't have millions of people to reach out to immediately. And I also think I was actually surprised that I thought just like legally they would have to say like, we reached out to Sophia Franklin for comment and she didn't answer or something like that. And they didn't. And I think the way they got around it is I think any like video footage or like, what do you call it? Like recordings or whatever was probably at the time like, what do you call it? Like Barstool Sports property that then gave them permission to use it. So they don't like Sophia probably signed something that it's basically like they can use these things, or it's like the Call Her Daddy, like they probably own that footage and stuff.
I just think like, and we know this from like reporting, you know, I think if you talk about anybody, you kind of need to reach out for their side of the story.
Yeah.
And we're gonna, I guess, get into this too, but like they also really like talk about somebody in the documentary who I would assume they would reach out to as well, but I don't know.
So I have a lot of respect for Alex Cooper for talking about this because actually, let me give a little bit of background. So at the end of the first episode, they basically have to explain the fact that, like, she was a soccer player. She played for Boston University. She played, like, on teams representing the U.S. She was playing, like, she was making, like, David Beckham moves, you know? Like, she was a soccer player.
Like soccer star.
Yes.
And we're also, just trigger warning, we're going to get into some topics about
sexual assault,
harassment,
and misconduct.
Yes.
Yeah. And so they have to basically explain, like, why did she go from soccer to podcasting? And so Alex Cooper explains the story about how she went to Boston University. She was very excited because it was going to be a female coach. She hadn't worked with a lot of female coaches. And she explains that, like, almost, I don't know if it was immediately, but like from her first year there, the coach started paying special attention to her. And she started doing things where like they would watch like footage back of the tapes. And actually the way she described it reminded me of, have you ever seen Love Actually, where it's like Keira Knightley's like watching the footage from her wedding and it's like zoomed in things from the guy who's like obsessed with her and she's like, oh, they're all of me. But sorry, not to make fun of it, but just the way she described it, just that's what I thought of. But anyway, so they're like showing like video and the coach would be like pausing on Alex and she would be like, look at her legs, like look at her hair, like look at like very like zoomed in things on her. And then, like, she would say, you know, she would go out with a guy, and then the coach would call her in the next day, and she would be like, so I heard you slept off campus last night. And Alex would be like, yeah, so do all the other girls. A lot of people do, yeah. Yeah, and I forget, like, her coach would basically be like, that's not acceptable, you can't do that, you're not the other girls, or something like that. And then she would also, like, always make excuses where she would be alone with Alex a lot in a way that was uncomfortable. And then, like, if Alex, like, eventually got to the point where she was like, well, I'm going to go hang out with my friends. I'm going to go, like, do these normal things and still, like, show up to practice and do what I'm doing. And so she eventually kicked one of Alex's friends off the team as, like, a punishment to Alex, where she was like, see how easily I could do that? Like, see what happens when you don't play by the rules. And so then...
What rules?
I know. And I will say, shout out to Alex Cooper's mom. Her mom is a real one. And, like, even, I always thought this when they talked about her on the podcast, like, the way she talks to her daughters and her children and just the way she supports her is, I'm like, I would love to be that mom. But when she would call her mom and she would tell her all the stuff that the coach was doing, and her mom wrote it all down. She had a book of everything for years that Alex was like, this is what this coach is like doing. This is what she said to me, whatever, whatever. So then it got to the point, and I forget what the tipping point eventually was, but it got to the point where like, and also like this coach was like emotionally manipulating her and would like do things where she would just put her in like uncomfortable situations.
Yeah.
So then they approached the school, Boston University, and they were like, this coach has been like sexually harassing me for years. And her mom was like, here's the booklet I have of all the stuff, dated, detailed, that Alex has told me she has done over the years. And this is, again, according to Alex, we should say allegedly because we don't have fancy lawyers, but they apparently didn't even open the book. All they said was like, well, what do you want? Like, what kind of deal do you want? Because we're not going to fire the coach.
Yeah.
Which makes me think.
Which happens a lot.
Yeah. And also, like, they must have been doing that. Like, they must have known that the coach is like that. And so Alex, once the documentary dropped, she came out with a solo episode, like, the day after, where she was saying, like, she thought it was important to share this story because she had heard of, like, other girls on the team who had had similar experiences. And I think, like, again, it was pretty ballsy, like, from a journalist perspective. Like, they put up the coach's, like, image. They put up videos of the coach. They straight up said her name, and they didn't say allegedly. They just said it straight up.
I know.
And I was like, again, they have lawyers, but, you know.
So I did see something where this congresswoman, her name is Nancy Mace, is like going to, she said she was going to sue the New York, was it New York Magazine, I think? Because New York Magazine accidentally released an article that said that the soccer coach was Nancy Mace.
Oh.
And her name is Nancy Feldman.
Yeah.
And Nancy Mace said she was going to take out a lawsuit against New York Magazine because she was getting like harassed by people. And she was like, she's like, I've never been a soccer coach. I did not sexually harass anybody. Like, she said she was going to sue New York Magazine.
She's like, I can't even kick a ball, okay?
Yeah.
Like, that's actually funny. But that is a really bad typo on their part. And that's also
Really
why
bad.
you should support journalism, because I don't know if they have the funds, you know? They need more fact checkers probably. But I also think, so what's interesting about like, I think like that made me respect Alex. I think I respect her as a creator too, even if I don't really like the content that she creates. Like, it's very clear she puts a lot of work into it. She's very much like a perfectionist. Like, this is her dream. This is what she wants to do, and she's doing it. And I think, like, again, seeing those videos of her as a kid and seeing like, okay, this is what she's always wanted to do. And I do think it was true probably that she was doing, like, she had all the ideas for the podcast and all the editing or whatever. And like Sophia probably didn't do a lot, even though like Sophia was bringing her personality to it. I just think like that made me respect her more and kind of be like, okay. And I also appreciated hearing where she was like, you know, it used to be very like, look, 9,000 and like whatever. And she was like, I can't do that personality forever. Like, I'm getting older.
Yeah, I mean, she's married now.
Yeah.
So it's like,
so she was like, I wanted to transition to something different, and she did.
Yeah.
And I think it used to annoy me, that transition, where I guess like because she has the IP and she has the following, but I was just like, why are we still calling it Call Her Daddy?
yeah.
But whatever. And so I think that was interesting. What I think also is interesting is that like, I don't think people talk a lot about like Call Her Daddy fans remind me of kind of like Taylor Swift fans, in that her wins are their wins. Like, she is them and they are her.
Yeah. And
it's interesting because you don't see like, that is obviously hard to replicate, you know, like we don't see Alex Coopers and Taylor Swifts every day. But I'm curious, like, what is creating that dynamic for fans, in that, like, I don't know, like, anything that I'm a fan of that I have that relationship with, but obviously people do. And I think podcasts are a very intimate thing where it's like you're literally, we're your friends and we're in your ears, you know? So maybe that's part of it.
I think, yeah, and I think it's interesting, though, that I was going to go back to just the name really quick, because I was going to say this, but it's funny, like, that the name is still Call Her Daddy, because it's hilarious to see, like, Kamala Harris go on a show called Call Her Daddy, or, like, somebody just, like, really, like, you know, just somebody that you'd be like, oh, like, Jane Goodall was on the show. It's just, like, it's just funny that they're on a show called Call Her Daddy, and they're saying that, you know, it's just, like, it's just so, she shouldn't change the name, it's the IP, but I just am like, at some point, it doesn't match
it doesn't make sense anymore.
Like, the name doesn't match the format, I guess.
Yeah. But I was also gonna say, like, again, going back to her being like, I was bullied for being a redhead as a kid, like, I think also one thing that I think is interesting and that we have to take into consideration, like, people are like, wow, she's really changed, like, podcasting. She is a female podcaster, which is true. Glad. We need that. Mm-hmm. But she also has the privilege of being a very traditionally attractive, white, upper middle class blonde woman. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, like, I would be curious to see her success if she didn't have all of those things. But also, I was reading this article, it was a Substack, it's called Alex Cooper, Please Interview One Black Girl by Shonda Daniels. And she, like, did the math, and from January 3rd, 2024 to June 6th, 2025, there were 153 episodes, 164 guests. 68% of the guests were white women. The second most interviewed demographic were white men, which is crazy for a show about women. Like, okay, yes, white women, I guess, is like a huge demographic, but then white men come before black women, which in 18 months, she had a black woman on her show 15 times. It's like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
In 18 months.
Wait, how much does she really, is it like an episode each week?
I think so. So it was 15 times in 153 episodes was a black woman on her show, which is like, okay, you should probably create like some sense of diversity, but I think, like, you know, and that I don't think that Alex Cooper is necessarily at fault for this. I think it is a product of our society where we just automatically like uplift white people more than we do people of color. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I think, and then it's interesting when you look in the crowd of the people at her shows, it's primarily like white, like, you know, 20s, 30s women. Yeah. And I don't know. I think, I was going to ask, does she exclusively interview people now, or is it also just she just has regular episodes where she's just talking? I think she mainly interviews people, but I think she does sometimes do like a solo episode every now and then.
Okay.
But
the thing is, like,
go ahead.
I think I do agree she needs to broaden her, you know, who she has on, and, you know, just kind of, you know, have a little bit more diversity on the show. But to what you were saying about, like, you look at her audience and it's just like a sea of, you know, primarily white women. I guess I'm just kind of like, I still don't really understand the appeal in general. Like, I don't know what I would go to a show for her about.
So I'll be honest, so podcast live shows are interesting because, like, my friends and I, shout out Emily and Tanya, we went to go see, like, the Giggly Squad live show, and I love Giggly Squad, but the live show was kind of just like, oh, this is interesting.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, the intro to her show did seem very fun, where it was like she had like these guys in the front who seemed like they were security guards, and then all of a sudden they were like dancing, and like they were dancing with her. But then it almost seemed like a extended like TED Talk type thing, where she's like talking to the crowd, you know, and people were very excited. I realized as someone who like loves podcasts, obviously here we are, I was like, I don't know, like, if podcasts always, like,
need to have a tour. Yeah, it doesn't translate.
And it's weird for her to have this, like, interview platform now, but then, like, that's obviously not, like, the format of her live show.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The concept of a live show for podcasts has just always been interesting to me, because it's, like, definitely trending now more.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know if I would, I mean, respectfully, I just don't know if I would pay to go see that.
Yeah. I think it's also interesting because when she was talking about like the stuff, like she, you know, mentions the stuff she's talking about on her podcast, I'm like, well, if these are people who like love your podcast, they probably heard you. Like, she's like talking about like, how did we get here? I started doing like what, like, and I was like, I think everyone knows that. Like, I know that about you, and I haven't listened to the podcast in like 4 years.
Right.
You know? So I was just like, that's interesting. I just feel like it would be very boring. And also, this is not a big deal, but it was wild to me that she comes out and she's, you know, she's known for like interviewing people like in sweats, and she's in full sweats on a stage, like dancing and stuff. And I'm just like, God, I would be sweating so much.
I know, the lights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think overall, I don't think it was like a groundbreaking documentary. I don't think it, again, I think like a lot of these documentaries are, I think it was just kind of like a love letter to herself, or like an image, like,
Yeah.
thing.
I definitely think it could have used another at least 10 more years to get a documentary, because who knows, something more interesting might happen down the road. I just almost think, again, especially if we're not, like, there could be a documentary about the fallout between her and Sophia.
Oh, yeah.
And that to me would be more interesting than a documentary about Alex's life. And I'm not disregarding what she went through in her life. The thing in college sounds very traumatic, and I'm not disregarding that at all. Like, I'm not downplaying that. But I just feel like her life, it felt, based on everything that you've explained to me, her talking about being bullied as a kid, it feels almost like, or like the tour thing, drama, it just feels like it's like they were trying to find bad experiences for her for this documentary to be interesting.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know another way to phrase that, but just like, it's like they're trying to find
interest,
like interesting things about her life that I just don't know if like that is necessary.
Didn't even mention the weirdest scene to me. So she goes back to her apartment in New York City where her and Sophia lived when they started the podcast. She's like knocking at the door and she's like, oh, no one's home. And then she's standing on the stoop and she's like talking about like, I wish like there's like, I love this apartment, whatever. And these girls are like, oh, sorry, like, can we like, we live here. And she's like, you live here? And she's like, what apartment? And they say 301, and she was like, that was my apartment. And they're like, what? Oh my. And I'm like, this has to be so staged. She's like, can I go up and see your apartment? And I'm like, in what world? And their apartment is like perfectly clean and put together. I'm like, this is so staged.
In what world? And also, I'm sorry, you lived there when you were in your early 20s. Like, you didn't grow, like, it's different. I saw an interview with Kieran Culkin where he and the interviewer went to his old apartment that he grew up in with like, and it was like a small apartment in New York City that like him and like all his siblings grew up in. And he literally, because they all just know each other, all the neighbors knew each other and they still live there, all they did was show up and he just like shouted up to them and was like, hey, like it's me. And they just like invited him up to their old apartment. Like it wasn't like a staged thing, because like that's interesting. They lived there as kids, so that's like, that to me is more interesting than Alex living there when, like 5 years ago?
And she kept being like, there's magic in this apartment. Like, and I'm like, is there? Because it sounds like you started a podcast with a person who then like, you now hate. And
how long did they have that podcast like before Sophia left?
So they started in 2018, and I remember it was 2020, it was during the pandemic when they started like.
So 2 years?
Yeah. Yeah, they lived there for like 2 years.
Come on.
It was.
And so they go back to. Like, that's what I'm saying. I don't think it's emotional or interesting enough to like warrant all that. I guess that's what I'm gonna
and to be like, oh, like show me. And also, again, like the privilege of it to be like, oh, like this is our like quote unquote shitty apartment that we lived in. She's like, we had to grab a couch off the street that then like had cockroaches, and they show like a video of her and Sophia like pulling a couch off the street, and I'm like, why did you have to do that? Like, and it's not, I don't think
it's
like. It's
not that bad of an apartment, right? It's
fine.
It's
and I will say, okay, so her and Sophia live there together. It does seem like 5 girls are living there now, which like, I don't know what's going on there. But
because it's a New York City apartment that most people can't afford. Yeah, so that's exactly what I'm saying. It's like your life is. That's why I feel like they're grasping at straws to make her life sound a little bit more like she was pulling herself like, up. And I'm like, I'm not saying she wasn't. I respect her hustle for sure.
Yeah.
But I just don't, again, this is where I'm like, I don't think everything warrants a documentary.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And I also forgot to mention this, but she talks a lot about how like she made those videos as a kid. She's like, yeah, my parents made like their whole basement into like her video studio. And I'm like, that is an incredibly privileged thing.
Totally. For like, a whole basement.
Like, that's crazy. But I do think, like, again, it made me respect her a lot more, because I was like, okay, like, yeah, I can see you put a lot of work into this. Like, this is you. Like, I just think, like, there were some goofy parts of it. Or, like, in general, like, I was just like, why are we doing this now?
Yeah.
Like, what? I don't know. And again, I respect her for coming out about the coach. And I think, like, hearing her as a businesswoman, I'm like, yeah, you seem very creative and very smart. I just don't like, I still like the jokes and stuff that she was making like on stage and stuff. I was like, it's just not funny. And like I said, her first solo episode after Sophia left
was her just yelling.
Yeah, her just yelling wiener in my ear.
Yeah.
And she said wiener on stage about something. I was like, God, I hate the way
I hate that word.
I hate that word so much. But I was just like, okay, never mind. I like never listened again.
Yeah.
Like and people were like, you should give it a try. Like, what about this episode? And I would do it and I'd be like, okay. Like I listened to the JoJo Siwa one. I was like, this is fine. But
that one I would have listened to, actually.
But the thing is, I'm like, there's so many other people interviewing celebrities. You know what I mean? So
that's what I think. I also think is I'm just like, I don't know what sets her apart. Like I've heard her interviews, and again, I just don't think. Like, I don't see what sets her apart from anybody else. Like, what makes her such a good interviewer? I don't personally hear it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think she is that good of an interviewer personally.
No, I mean, it's all like pre-authorized questions. And
right.
Like, it's
definitely
never,
is that.
Yeah. And I don't know, like, but I think people love her from who she was.
Yeah.
And
it was an interesting evolution, I guess.
Yeah. And again, I'm all for her, like, almost beating out Joe Rogan. Take him down.
Yeah.
Take him down. But I don't know. It's just interesting. Again, it's an interesting, just like with Sabrina Carpenter, like, not just like, but like, it's an interesting, there's two sides to every coin, you know?
Mm-hmm. Is it interesting?
It's interesting. What did we were on the couch earlier, we just were whispering interesting to each other.
Yeah, I feel like we say that a lot to each other. I've noticed, like, in our texts, we say interesting to something when we don't
know what to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is definitely, that might have been, and not to, like, claim this, but that might have been a thing you picked up from me, because I've been doing that for years and people always clock me on it. And I'm always just like, interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting. But anyways, again, if you love Call Her Daddy, I'm happy for you. I know Emily's going to listen to this and she's going to be probably mad.
I know.
I'm sorry. I
did think about that.
You, Emily.
There was like a couple things I said where I was like, Emily, please don't kill me.
I almost bought Emily a Daddy Gang necklace like when it was still out, but then they sold out. Like their merch sells out really fast.
I respect the hustle. Whatever. We already went into it.
Yeah.
Oh, anyway. So one thing that we both watched, that you had to really kind of get me to keep watching.
We'll get into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was The Studio.
Woo!
Which was a show on Apple. If you haven't watched it, I can now say give it a watch.
Yeah.
But it stars Seth Rogen. I think he created it.
So him and
Evan... it's him and Evan Goldberg.
Yeah.
Who, they've created, I think, most things together.
Yeah, they were the ones who made, oh my God, why am I blanking on the movie?
Knocked Up.
No, like his first movie together with Emma Stone.
Oh, super bad.
They made that when they were like, they wrote it when they were like, I don't know, 15 or 16 together. Oh. And they've been making like all of their films and stuff ever since. And now they have a studio
Can I say what's wild really quick? I think it's wild when people who were friends in school all like make it big, like like both make it big in Hollywood. I was actually just watching a video, a Wes Anderson video where he for an hour just explains all of his movies. He has 12 movies. And I didn't know this, he and Owen and Luke Wilson were friends in college. They all went to school together, and I
picture Wes Anderson for some reason being very old.
And now he's like...
I know.
I don't know how old he is.
That's
but
wild.
He made... his first movie was Bottle Rocket, and it was like based on a short film that he made with Owen and Luke Wilson when they were like in college. And I'm just
crazy.
Like, it's wild to me that you, like, what are the odds that you and your friend would both get famous?
Yeah, well, it's like Paul Rudd and John Hamm, where, like, they were friends before they were famous.
Yeah, or, like, Nick Kroll created Big Mouth with, I don't know the other, it's Andrew something, but I've seen, like, interviews where they, like, they were friends since they were little kids, like, literally since they were, like, you know, whatever, since they were children, and Big Mouth is, like, based on their lives. I'm like, what are the odds that you both ended up in Hollywood, like both writing for shows and stuff?
Yeah,
like, what are the odds?
I don't know. It's crazy, but this is like when I hear about them, like Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, they met at a bat mitzvah when they were like 15 or whatever.
Yeah,
and it's like, and they created, like, Superbad is still like a very much a coming of age story that people talk about all the time. And Pineapple Express, and, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, y'all did it together.
Seriously. And then
they are the Matt Damon and
Ben Affleck. Again, another one where it's like, what are the odds?
Yeah,
that
what
you
are
both
the odds?
Become famous? Well, they wrote something together and then became famous from that. So I guess that's how it works. But it's still like, And then there's always, like, one between, not with them, but, like, I guess, like, with Evan Goldberg and Seth Rogen or, like, Nick Kroll, whatever. It's, like, there's always, like, the one that becomes more famous.
Yeah.
I wonder how that feels for the other one.
I think, like, well, at least for this one, I
the
think...
Sophia.
Yeah. I think, like, Seth Rogen, because he's the actor, he's more famous. And I think...
more forward-facing.
I honestly think Evan Goldberg would be in a better position because he's probably making a great amount of money and like,
not famous.
And not famous. He gets to have his privacy.
Exactly. I always say that, too. I'm like, I actually want to be... I would want to be an actor who's like a character actor but isn't famous because they still get to work with a bunch of people. They're still respected in their profession, but they just don't have to be in like headlines or anything.
Yeah. And I was going to say, like, it's crazy that, you know, they've basically been cranking out bangers for like the past 20 years. I mean, and like some flops, but like mostly...
So, yes. And the thing I always say about, like, I get annoyed that Seth Rogen seems to be in everything lately. Yeah. And he always kind of, in my opinion, plays the same character, especially now. I'm not even talking about his, like, movies. I'm saying, like, now it just lately, like, he's in, like, a lot of, like, nuanced films that I'm kind of like, why do you have Seth Rogen? Like, he was in The Fabelmans, that Steven Spielberg movie.
Yeah.
He was on Pam and Tommy.
Oh, yeah.
And I was kind of, and again, it's just...
I love Seth Rogen, though.
So I always realize that I do. I'm like, oh, he is good, but sometimes I'm like, why? He plays sort of the same character and everything. I don't understand why he's always like hired to be in things. And that's how I felt when I first started the studio. So just to go in.
You didn't like it.
I didn't love it. I was excited for the show to come out. I was like, oh, a show about Hollywood. Like, that's going to be fun. And it has, so it stars Seth Rogen. It also has Catherine O'Hara's in it.
Yeah.
Ike something. What's his name?
Ike Barnholtz.
Yes.
And Bryan Cranston is in it.
He's in like 3 episodes.
And Kathryn Hahn.
Yes, and Kathryn Hahn. So it's got like a good cast. But basically the show is about this studio it's about a studio called
Continental.
And it's supposed to be, I don't know, like maybe Paramount or something. It's just supposed to be like one, like Universe or whatever. It's supposed to be like a huge like Hollywood studio. Yeah, film studio.
Movie studio. Yeah.
And basically Seth Rogen is he becomes the new studio head at the beginning of the show. So
he plays a character called Matt Remick.
Yeah. And he loves films. Like he's so passionate about movies, but sometimes his his passion is a lot and he gets himself into situations each episode. Yeah. Basically, like it's described his burning desire for approval and box office success. It like gets him into like a lot of precarious situations because he's so eager, and it really is a love letter to
Hollywood,
to movies and Hollywood. Yeah.
And that's why I loved it. And I also think it's interesting. So he said he like kind of thought of the idea after being on The Fabelmans and seeing like how Steven Spielberg Steven Spielberg like he was like, this is basically like so blatantly and unapologetically like fiction based on his real life. Yeah. And he was like, I want to do something like that. And so then that's how he started having the idea for like the studio. And he thought about like Matt Remick's character because they were talking about like, they had talked to the studio head as one does if you're Seth Rogen. And he had said this throwaway thing the studio head did where he was like, yeah, I got in this because I love films and now it's my job to ruin them. Yeah. Which is very like...
it's an interesting position because, again, he's so passionate about movies, and there's that quote, people are using it as like a meme now, but he's like, I'm single-handedly keeping cinema alive or whatever. But I think it's just interesting because at first I couldn't stand his character, and that's what made it hard to get through every episode because the show is filmed in a very
chaotic way.
It's
a one shot.
For the most part. And it's styled it's like a very interesting style.
Mm-hmm. I loved the fashion of
You said that, and that was one thing I didn't focus on the fashion at all.
Every outfit, all the creamy suits and all the colors.
Yes. And I kind of saw that once
it felt classic Hollywood.
Yeah. And so and even just from the first like episode, the plot of the first episode is that they're trying to make they're gonna make, because again, this is like a film studio, so they make like good movies, but then also like, you know, movies about like the Kool-Aid Man.
Yeah.
They decide this is going to be like the next like Barbie is going to be a movie about the Kool-Aid Man. It's going to be like an animated movie. You know, just like a stupid animated movie. But so they're trying to decide who they want to get like a big director for it.
Because he wants to make it a film and not just a movie.
Yeah, he wants to make it interesting somehow.
Yeah.
And so Martin Scorsese, and so there's a lot of like cameos, a lot of cameos on this show.
Which is interesting because so Seth Rogen was like, that was one of obviously the hardest things to do.
Yeah.
And I think like he said, so, like every now and then he would write the scene and then find the like person for the cameo, but he was like most of the time like we had to find the people to be in the cameo and then
write around it.
Yeah, think of which I'm like that's like incredibly difficult.
And I can kind of tell that because one of the episodes was about the director of Smile, which I was like,
yeah,
that's interesting because he's not like a huge director, I don't think, but it like centered around him making a new movie called what was it like Wink?
Yeah,
it was called Wink.
Yeah,
which I thought was funny.
Yeah.
But anyway, to describe the first episode, because to me this was like, it was funny, the plot was funny, but basically they bring Martin Scorsese in, who wants to write a movie about the what's it called, the
Jonestown Massacre.
Jonestown Massacre, which what happens in that? They drink the Kool-Aid. Yeah. And so Seth Rogen's like, oh, that's how I'll make the Kool-Aid movie, is like by doing a movie about Jonestown. And it's just like, it's a funny plot. And
it was very funny. And also Martin Scorsese, they said like the first time they saw him was when he came to like film the show. They were like, we just sent him the script, he loved it,
and he's funny as a person.
Yeah, he was funny in the show.
He was funny, and and
I think about his little body crying.
I know.
Hunched over.
His daughter has a TikTok and she records him all the time. She'll make him do trends and stuff. And he's just for it. Like he's just there, and he's just so cute. Like he's funny.
He is.
But the only issue with me with getting into the show is I just found Seth Rogen's character to be so annoying because he was just he just wouldn't stop. Like, he was just so over the top and just certain things. The Golden Globe... No, not the Golden Globe. What was the episode that drove me crazy? Well, the Golden Globe one was really bad, but the one where he goes to the gala with that girl.
Oh, so he goes with his girlfriend to... It's like a childhood cancer gala for doctors. And they basically are like he's talking about his job and they're talking about their job, and they kind of insinuate like,
their job is harder and more important.
Yeah, and he's like, well, like, you know, you have a bunch of sick people at the hospital. What are they going to be doing? Watching movies.
Yeah, but he won't let it go. Like, his thing is, like, he's so eager, he won't let things go. And so then there's, like, the Golden Globe episode, which, it was just too much. Like, it was like Zoe Kravitz was starring in a movie from their studio, and she was clearly going to win the Golden Globe. Like, they just knew that. And so he keeps trying to get her to put him into her speech, like, and to thank him, because if you thank somebody, then it's like, it becomes like their name is out there. And so he was so annoying.
Yeah.
I did think it was really funny in that the whole bit where they kept bringing up whatever Ike's name is.
Oh, yeah.
They kept thanking him in every speech. And that just was so realistic to me. Like, that would really happen at the Golden Globes, where it's like a running bit that they keep thanking him.
But I think it's interesting because I was reading like an interview with Seth Rogen where he talked about that plot, and he was like, I mean, it's very true. If you talk to studio executives, like the thing is, if something is bad, it's on you. Like you want to put like invest in people and like make this money, but if you invest in it, it's on you. But if it's good, you want to be recognized for it, and like you often don't. Like I don't know who's the head of any studio, you know. Which I think is interesting.
And they bring up points in this show that I think, like, you wouldn't otherwise know.
Yeah.
So, like, they say in that episode that they're like, put it in your contract that, like, people have to thank you in their speeches. And I was like, interesting. I guess, like, that is probably a thing. But the only thing with that is, like, what if you got nervous? You know, sometimes celebrity, like, actors, if they win an award, they get nervous. They don't know who to thank. They lose their speech. I'm like, so what, are you going to get sued if you forget to thank them or something?
That's true. I don't know.
Like, how does that work?
I don't know. I've never won an award, ever.
Yeah.
Except for Most Outstanding Violist in 7th grade. Aww. That was my personal Oscar.
That's awesome.
Thank you. But I loved, also, there's an episode where they're trying to cast the Kool-Aid movie, and it's a whole thing about, like, diversity, and they're like, wait. Is it like, does it look bad that like the Kool-Aid Man is a black man?
And so then they decide, but then they're like, is it bad if we don't have a black man record? And then they have to like rearrange the whole cast because they're like, it can't be a black man and not have a black family. But then does that look racist if we have like, and they have it like, It just gets
It's
like very
so
chaotic
funny.
and crazy.
I loved the Wonder episode. Chris started watching the show, so we just watched it again the other day because it's very much like
the which episode?
the Wonder, where he's like they're trying to
Wonder?
record like this with Greta Lee. They're trying to record like this one long shot.
Yeah.
And
that
they
one
only have a
drove
certain-
me crazy.
I know you said it did, and I was like, I loved it because that would be me as a studio exec, where he's just like fumbling around, and then he like accidentally trips and he like breaks a glass table, and I was just like, that would be me.
But why did, like, that's what, I don't think it would be. It felt too much. Like, it was just kind of like, okay, somebody would, at some point, I think you would read the room and be like, okay, I'm being annoying. Like, let me just, but it was like, he was being just so obnoxious. And it's like, wouldn't you just at some point be like, okay, I shouldn't be on this set.
Yeah.
Everybody hates me right now.
Wait, so what was the turning point where you were like, I love this?
Literally the last couple episodes, because sometimes you have to look at a show as a whole at the end and be like, okay, that actually was a good show. And that's what happened for me. So in the last 2 episodes, it focuses on them going to CinemaCon. So they're bringing, and I actually didn't really know what CinemaCon was. So like that actually taught me a lot about what they do there. But they're basically selling at CinemaCon, studios are selling their movies to movie theaters. So they're like pitching their movies so movie theaters will show them at their theaters, whatever, buy them. And so the whole thing is they go to CinemaCon, but they find out through, so Bryan Cranston, who is
I think he owns
he's the head of the studio.
Yeah.
Although what is
He's above Seth Rogen's character.
Yes.
That's all I know.
yeah, he's the big
Cheese.
man.
Yeah.
I didn't want to say that word. I hate that word.
Cheese?
I hate when people say the big cheese. Like, that's so gross to me. Ew.
Okay, interesting.
Anyway, Bryan Cranston, who is very funny on this show. I'm not kidding, crying with laughter at
When
these
they
episodes.
said, there was like a line where he's like, do you know how old I am? And he's like, I don't know, in your 60s? He's like, I'm 82
Yeah.
or something.
He's like, oh my God.
I was laughing so hard at that.
Yeah, and so the whole thing is like Bryan Cranston tells Seth Rogen that they're potentially going to be sold to Amazon, which would mean that they are all out of jobs. Like they'd all be kicked out. And so Seth Rogen's like, oh shit. So Seth Rogen's, and this is like where his character, this is just like an example of the kind of person he is. He keeps like talking about, he's going to throw a party. And he keeps describing it as a Hollywood-style buffet,
A classic
an old, like a classic Hollywood-style buffet, which to him means drugs, like weed, like he has like.
I think it's is it acid?
I thought it was just pot brownies.
No. It was definitely more than.
No, it was just like a ton of. I thought it was like a lot of it.
No, I think maybe it was shrooms.
Shrooms, that's what it was.
That's
it was
what it was.
shrooms.
Yeah, I was like,
no, it was more than pot. Yeah,
you'd have to do a lot of.
But
weed.
it wasn't like, so it was shroom. It was shroom brownies.
Yeah.
Right.
And everyone's like, okay, a Hollywood buffet.
Everyone's just like, okay, a buffet. He's like, he keeps calling it that.
Yeah.
No one knows what he's talking about. So he accidentally basically drugs everybody.
Yeah.
Like, and so he...
like in a lot, because he miscalculated the dosage.
He miscalculated the dosage. And Dave Franco's in it. He's so funny in it. And he's just like, he's just really high, like really like...
Yeah.
Just crazy. Zoe Kravitz shows up and she's supposed to be... promoting a movie the next day. They all have this presentation they're supposed to be at CinemaCon.
Which I will say, all the movies they describe, they're obviously fake movies, but they feel very real.
They
Even
did.
in the name.
Alphabet City or whatever. Yeah. And so Zoe Kravitz accidentally, they keep saying it's a microdose, but it's really like way more than they think. Like, so she takes she eats like 7 brownies, whatever. And she is just like tripping. Bryan Cranston is like spiraling because of this news that there might be going to Amazon. So he like is just going crazy.
He's also done the drugs. He's been drinking. He's doing cocaine.
And he's 82 years old. So this man could like have a heart attack.
Which no one else knows except for Seth Rogen's character. So he's like, you can't be doing this.
And it just, okay, so they now have to get Zoe Kravitz together. And Bryan Cranston disappears. And so what made me start like laughing just for the whole rest of the episode was that he apparently eats like nachos, and he like Dave Franco, they're trying to look for Bryan Cranston, so Dave Franco's like, he put his hand in nachos and like ate them. So now they're following a trail of nacho hands, like nacho cheese hands all over the hotel, and they're in Vegas, so they're in like a casino.
Yeah.
Trying to look for Bryan Cranston's character. And he's just like high as a kite, like just completely out of it. He falls over the edge of a thing. This is what I was like crying laughing. He falls over the edge they finally find him. They're trying to, like, pull him together, like, Weekend at Bernie style. And he falls over, like, a ledge and into a gondola that's, like, starts, like, moving. And, like, they're all chasing the gondola. And it just was making me laugh so hard.
I'll be honest, there were so many episodes I loved. I love movies
I didn't
about
laugh like that until, like, the last 2 episodes. And then, I won't spoil it for anyone who's going to watch it, but the very last scene of the show, I actually, like, got emotional. Like, I was kind of tearing up because it was, like, so, like, I was like, this is really such a love letter to
it really is
Hollywood when they're on stage. And
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and they're like, movies,
yeah.
movies. I was like, that's so beautiful.
I know.
And it really made me appreciate the whole show as a whole. So I might, like, one day go back and rewatch it.
I was going to say, we could probably watch it when Chris gets here. He's watching it right now. Yeah.
Okay. I hope there's a season 2.
There is. It got renewed. I'm pretty sure when I was researching today.
So I would recommend...
Unconfirmed, but I'm pretty sure.
For those who, like, watch it and are like me, and... Because I was talking to somebody...
Was it me?
No, I think it was Eric, actually, friend of the pod, Eric, was saying he also couldn't really get through it. He was having a hard time. He was like, yeah, I'm just not really into it. And I was like, I feel the same way. Like, it's just not that funny. Like, I didn't think it was super funny. And
I don't think it was meant to be, though. I think it was meant to be, like, satirical.
Yeah, that's comedy.
Yeah, but I don't think it's like it's not meant to be like a comedy. I think like
laugh out loud, but I just wasn't really like laughing at all.
I really laughed in the first episode with the whole Kool-Aid Jonestown.
The first one was funny, and that's what got me. But then like the second one drove me crazy, and then just the other ones, I felt like I even said this to you. I was like, I feel like there's so much content about Hollywood now that it's starting to feel a little old. Like we're like, okay, we get it, you know.
Yeah.
But once I finished the season, I really like looked back at the show as a whole, and I actually did really like it.
Yeah. Which I also want to say, shout out to my coworker who, if you ever listen to this, she went to the premiere and she knew like that I was going to watch. I was really excited, and she got me a hat.
Aww.
That says Continental Studios, and that was a very nice surprise.
Yeah, you told me that, like, you had shown me the hat, and you were like, but you didn't tell me, you just showed me the hat, and you're like, look, and I was like, I forgot it was called Continental Studios, so I was like,
fair point.
What?
Yeah. That makes sense. But I loved it, yeah, overall.
I would recommend.
I think the style is
It's also
good.
a great, one thing that Alexa and I have been talking about lately is, like, we need more, like, lunchtime shows.
Yes, it's like a 30-minute show. I thought Murderbot would be that, but then, like, I knew...
I think they are. They're like...
No, they are, but I knew once you weren't, like, raving about it, because it has Alexander Skarsgård in it, and I was like, if it has him in it, and Molly's not like, oh my god, you have to watch this show, I was like, it must not be like that.
You might like it. I watched the first 3, and I just fell off. Like, it's not that I thought whether it was great or not, I just kind of fell off of it.
Yeah.
But maybe I'll try to finish it. But that is also a lunchtime show.
Yeah, I know, because I've been watching Love Island during my lunch, and it's fine.
Yeah.
Overall.
Yeah. So one movie I saw recently was a movie called Bring Her Back, which is a horror movie. It's an A24 movie, and it was... I don't know if you saw this movie, but it's directed by Danny and Michael Filippo? I don't know how to say their last name, actually. Filippo. But they're Australian twins.
Filippo?
They're Australian filmmakers.
That was bad. I'm sorry, Australia.
But yeah, they're two like brother filmmakers, and they made the movie Talk to Me, which came out like a year or two ago.
Oh, I've heard of that.
That one was good. I actually liked this one better. Okay. But this movie it's A24, so it, obviously I'm already
A24,
intrigued.
Hire us, sponsor us, love us, be us.
Anyways. Be us. Yes.
Yeah, that sounds like the plot of an A24 film. We become a movie studio. Yes. Seth Rogen, write it.
No, Seth Rogen, don't get involved in A24. No offense, but I don't want that.
That's different vibes,
yeah, very different vibes.
Anyways.
They do mention A24 a lot in the studio, though, which
because, I mean, it is like a rising...
It's now a thing. I'm worried that it's going to become too big that it's no longer A24. Because to me, A24 is very much like a style. It's not even like... I mean, it's a studio, but it's like so much like you describe it as like a style of film.
I would say A24 makes films. Other studios make movies.
Yes, and this one was... the thing about this movie, I was thinking it was going to be a lot scarier than it was. I'd heard it was marketed as like so disturbing. It was like the most disturbing movie people have seen. And you know me, I'm very squeamish.
I hate seeing I think, honestly, if you're going to market a scary movie, don't hype it up as much as they do, because then you get into it and you're just like, it's never as big as the hype.
Yeah, and it got great reviews, and I would agree with the reviews of, like, the quality of the movie.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was, and you know me, I'm really squeamish, so I was actually kind of nervous going into the movie, because Talk to Me actually had some pretty brutal scenes in it. Like, there was particularly one scene that I was like, oh. But this one, I was expecting a lot more. But basically, the plot of the movie is that a brother and sister witness a terrifying ritual at the secluded home of their new foster mother. So the movie...
Always an orphan.
Yes. So
Jerry Seinfeld wrote this script.
I love that you hang on to the fact that he was an orphan. That is not at all what I think about
Actually,
him.
wait, no, I think it was just both his parents were orphans. That's what it was.
Yeah. Why is that interesting?
It's random. It's what a coincidence.
It's so not.
They were both orphans?
As adults? Sometimes, yeah, that
happens.
happens.
No, like they were orphaned. I don't think you can call an adult an orphan. They're just parentless.
You totally can. I don't think it makes...
I think you have to be a child to be an orphan. I'm going to look up the definition.
I think it's just if a person loses both of their parents, they're orphans. I don't think it means that they're children.
I don't know.
If you're an orphan expert, please call in right now.
If you run
and get this settled.
An orphanage, let us know.
Do those exist anymore? They exist in other countries.
I think it's just like foster care.
Homes. Okay, so
So back to the
speaking of foster homes, as if we weren't already talking about that, and that's how we got onto the subject. It's like, speaking of foster homes.
Whoopsies.
Sorry. Whoopsies made an oopsies. Okay, I always say that.
I love it.
So anyway,
yeah. Sorry.
So this brother and sister, they are actually half siblings, I believe. But their mother had I think they had different moms. I can't remember. Anyway, their father dies in the very beginning of the movie. Sorry, spoiler, but that is kind of the plot of the movie. So I'll be getting into some spoilers here. I'm sorry if that already was one, but it's really not, because it's kind of the plot of the movie.
Okay.
But spoiler for Bring Her Back. But their dad dies in kind of like a pretty brutal way, and they flash back to it a lot throughout the movie.
Very A24 of them.
It's not brutal, it's just like how they show him was brutal. They had to see him, and like that was obviously traumatizing for them. So they get sent to it's an older brother and his younger sister she's blind. And I just loved the chemistry of these two siblings. First of all, the boy, the actor that played the brother, his name is Billy Barrett. He reminds me of like a young Evan Peters. He like really looks like him. And he was also a great actor. But the two of them have really good chemistry. He's just like a really good like big brother to her, and he's just like,
How old are they?
They're teenagers, so they're like in high school.
Okay.
And he's just like, he really cares about her, and he wants to be like her guardian, but he is 3 months away from turning 18. So for now, they have to both be in foster care. And so he is like, really like, he could have lived on his own, but she has to go to foster care. But he's like, she's blind. He needs to be there for her. So he wants to go with her. And so they get sent to this woman who is played by Sally Hawkins, who is a great actor. She's amazing. And they go and stay with her. She's very, like, interesting. She's really obsessed with the girl. And if you find out that it's because her daughter died, and her daughter was also blind. And so she's, like, she has this, like, connection to the girl. Like, she's, like, very obsessed with her, but she does not care about the boy at all. Like, you can tell she wants him out of the picture.
Yeah.
She also has...
She's not mad about the boy.
Not mad about the boy. But she's, like, weirdly obsessed with the daughter. But he sleeps in, like, an attic room, like, whatever. But she has her old daughter's old room. Meanwhile, she also is taking care, one of her other foster kids is this, like, little boy who is very strange. He, like, doesn't talk. There's something very creepy about him. I think his name is Ollie or something. Oh. But he's, like, very weird. And basically in the very beginning of the movie, they show, like, a videotape, a creepy this was probably the scariest part of the movie. But they show, like, a cult, like, it's very much like a cult situation where it's like they're doing a ritual.
What's the difference between a cult and a cult? Which one are you saying right now?
I'm saying a cult. I think
a
cult
is like
OCC.
is like witchcraft type of things.
Right. Which I guess that actually was what it was.
It's an occult
either way,
cult.
there was some ritual stuff going on.
Okay.
So you're kind of like, oh, like that's what I thought the movie was going to be. Really, it's really not, and that was a little disappointing. Was like I felt like it could have been a little creepier, a little scarier.
Ah, you would have loved this other show. I'll recommend it to you when I can remember the name.
Okay. I also watched a movie this weekend.
Archive 81. That's the name of it. Sorry.
Oh, that sounds familiar. I also watched a movie with Matthew called The Damned. It's on Hulu.
Oh, I've heard of that. I've heard of it from
really
you.
Good. Yeah, I just told you about it. It's for anyone who hasn't seen it though. It's a folk horror movie, which that's right up my alley, like an Icelandic horror.
I would love to get you
horror.
in a straw hat around a murder. I think you'd love
in
that.
A straw hat.
Very folky.
Is it? No, I want to be in like midsummer clothes.
They were
straw hats in a folk horror. I just love folk horror.
I guess I'm just thinking of like the Wicker Man type thing. But anyways, continue.
Then I want to be wearing like a creepy animal mask.
Yeah. Okay, I would love that for you.
Anyway, so they showed that, and like basically what happens, again, this is a spoiler. Are you going to see it?
At some point. It's fine.
So basically she's trying to bring, so Sally Hawkins' character is the foster mother. You find out that she's trying to bring her daughter back from the dead through this like ritual where there has to be a host, and Ollie is like the host. So she has her daughter in like an ice box, and she's like trying to bring, it's like this whole ritual.
She's got her daughter on ice.
But she is basically so he has to be like somehow the host, but then like she's gonna put her in the blind girl's body.
Okay.
So that's why she's taking them in.
This is very similar to the plot of The Haunting of Bly Manor.
Interesting.
Yes.
Never watched it.
I know.
But again, like it teased kind of this like occult aspect that they just didn't really have. I felt like they could have gone into that more. It wasn't super scary. There was like a couple disturbing scenes, like the little boy, before you find out like why, he just does some like really crazy stuff. Like at one point he eats a knife with his teeth. The brother, because
like
the brother,
he swallows it like a magician?
So at one point the foster mom and the daughter like leave the house. They go somewhere, I can't remember why, I can't remember Billy Barrett's character's name, but the brother, he's home alone with creepy little Ollie, and he feeds him something from a knife, like he's cutting up fruit or something, and so he's like, here you go, and he feeds it to him from a knife, which is weird. And Ollie just puts the knife in his mouth and I had to look away, so I don't know exactly what he did, but he like crushed the knife with his teeth, and his mouth was all bloody, and he tried to take him to a hospital. Yeah, it was that part was pretty gross. He eats like animals too. It's like very weird. Yeah.
What would you do if I were possessed? Like you feed me watermelon and I bite into a knife like that. Like what's your first react? Like what are you gonna do?
I think in fight or flight, I am freeze, I guess. Like I'm flight, yeah. Or freeze.
You just run out into on our street just
I think I would.
Yeah.
I think I would. The problem is if you're isolated, then that's an issue. And typically in these horror movies, like they're always on like a secluded house.
Always.
So they can't run out and get neighbors.
Always. I think that's what, do you ever watch The Babadook?
I never watched that.
Oh, you should.
It just didn't entice me. And also
scary.
people were talking about it a lot, which annoyed me, so that made me not want to watch it. You know me.
Interesting.
Sorry. But the movie really,
okay.
Maybe one day, but even when I see it, I'm like, that doesn't look very scary to me. But the movie, like, overall really touched on grief. Like, so it was like a horror movie, but it did have, like, you know, it really touched on grief. And I think the chemistry between the brother and sister was really good. The acting was really good with these kids. And I think I say give it a watch if you don't mind the spoilers that I just gave. But I thought it was good.
It's interesting. Like when you said you were
I didn't say how it ended.
You were seeing this film at the same time at the same movie theater that I was seeing Mission Impossible.
Yes,
which is so weird.
We were texting each other from like the theater over, and I was like, listen, the previews before this movie were really good. They showed, and I'll touch on this a little bit actually. This is kind of interesting. They showed they showed a bunch of really good horror movie previews that I'm like very excited about.
Yeah.
That Matthew and I
A24 Christmas Carol. Oh, well, it's Robert
It wasn't
Eggert.
A24. Oh, yes, I want to give that update. Remember one time listeners, when I said that I really want to see an A24 Christmas Carol movie. Maybe I didn't say that on here. Maybe I texted you.
We talked about it, yeah.
I'm sure I did.
Like 6 months ago.
The prophecy, I sometimes just...
You have a weird sixth sense about things.
I know.
It scares me.
Maybe just because it's a great idea and other people agree with me. That could be some of it. But it's not A24, but close enough. Yeah. They just announced that Robert Eggers is making a Christmas Carol movie. And
we're here for it.
Probably.
Seated.
And it's like talks, I guess, that Willem Dafoe is going to play Ebenezer Scrooge, which I was like,
I could see that. He would play a good Scrooge. Scrooge him up. You know, it's kind of different for him, though, because in normal, like, if you go by, like, what he normally plays, he'd be, like, one of the ghosts. What?
Like, because he's always, like, kind of the creepy, like, weird character. Who is, like, sort of the manic, like, you know, whatever. Like, I don't... It's like I see him as Ebenezer Scrooge, but at the same time, I don't.
I'm trying to think of, like, who else would play a good Scrooge.
Benedict Cumberbatch.
He's too young.
Is he, though? Because I just saw him in something, and I was like, he is looking a little bit older.
He's got to be, like, 75 at least, you know?
Oh, Scrooge, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think Benedict Cumberbatch could really... transform himself into that, like to make himself look old.
Maybe Jack Nicholson. That would be an interesting.
Jack Nicholson, I don't think is acting anymore.
Do you think he's gonna do a British accent?
Sure.
Do you think Muppets will be in it?
I hope so. That's what I was gonna say.
What if it's
next.
Robert Eggers,
Muppets,
Willem Dafoe?
I actually don't want to see it unless it's that.
And Muppets.
That's the thing is, like, I still want the rest of them to be Muppets.
Yeah.
Even if it's just Willem Dafoe as Ebenezer Scrooge. Who would you cast in, like, the rest of the who would you cast as, like, the different ghosts?
Ooh, that's tough.
Don't you think, like, Cynthia Erivo would kill it as, like, one of the ghosts?
She would, but I feel like...
I don't know why. That just came to my head.
Maybe, like, as, like, the ghost of, what is it, Christmas Past?
Yeah.
Or...
yeah.
Because I feel like she has, like, a nice quality about her, like...
Exactly. Future has to be Bill Skarsgård because he's scary. Yeah. Future scares the shit out of me. It always, no matter what play I'm seeing, what version of Muppets one scares me so bad. I'm so afraid of the ghost of Christmas Future.
I don't know.
Who would be
Tiny Tim?
Tiny Tim. Probably some unknown A24 child.
They should put the child from Adolescence.
He's too old. He's like a straight up teenager now.
Yeah, I guess so.
I saw him on Jimmy...
Who would play Miss Piggy?
I saw him on Jimmy Kimmel.
Oh, really?
Or Jimmy Fallon, somebody, I don't know. Who would play Miss Piggy?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're now casting humans as the Muppets.
What's her character's name?
She is Tiny Tim's mother.
That's her name?
I don't know her name. That's not a character.
Okay, well, I said Miss Piggy.
Because what's the dad? Who is the dad? What's his, like, Bob? No, not Marley.
Bob Marley.
Sorry. No, there's Bob and there's
Bob.
Marley and Marley.
Oh, yeah. That's
a good
one.
Song.
Bob, like, Crunkit or something like that.
What's your favorite Muppets Christmas Carol song?
I've only seen it the one time.
Marley and
So probably
Marley.
that one.
Ah.
That's a good one.
I like the one where they're like, it's Christmas, and the little rat. Who's going to play Rizzo the Rat?
Oh, my God.
Rizzo the Rat.
As Rizzo the Rat.
Anyway,
actually, it's going to be the rat from Ratatouille.
All right. Back to what I was
Famous
saying,
rats.
though. I was going to say that we saw a lot of really good previews before this movie, and one of them was a movie with, I do want to see this, but it has Dave Franco and Alison Brie, which I love when they're together in something, just as I love them in real life together.
Yeah.
But they're in a movie called Together, where they're literally, it's like a body horror movie where they're like stuck together, and you know it's good because
were you about to say by the eyes, or were you just touching your eyes?
They show their eyelashes glued together. They're like literally stuck together.
Wait, so they're
and it's a
like,
horror movie.
My eyelash would be glued to your eyelash?
They don't really explain it in the preview. That's what I like. Is like it's a lot of chaos and horror, but I don't know exactly how they got in this situation.
I usually don't like body horror.
Yeah, but I like them.
Okay.
And here's the thing, is they use the song Happy Together in the preview, which...
They always do that.
I know. It's the best, like, happy song that can be used in scary situations.
It's like in the pilot episode of Dexter, and that was the first time I heard it like in a creepy setting, and now I can just never hear that song without.
That's how I feel about Good Vibrations by the Beach Boys. Because they used it in Us. He used it in Us, and it was like so scary. It was such a scary scene.
I will say I do love when a scary movie takes a happy song and turns it upside down.
That's another one that they do that with a lot, is that Every Day.
Because
it's like kind of creepy.
Or like, do you remember Insidious when it was like,
not Tiny Tim. What's his name? I think it is Tiny Tim.
Tiptoe through the tulips. Anyway,
song
sorry,
scares
y'all.
The shit out of me.
It's very scary. And then you just hear
movie
of a child.
Okay, please. I'm scared now. It's dark out. I don't like this. No. Even without that movie, that song would be so scary.
It is. Like, why? Who recorded that and why?
His name is Tiny Tim or something. It's
full circle.
Something like that. Okay. Anyway, Billy. I want to see that movie. But I was going to say, okay, let me just like finish this thought.
Sorry.
This podcast is going to be long. But really, like, last thing about that movie is I found out, I think it looks good and I want to see it, but apparently they stole the concept because these guys are like going to sue, I think they're suing Dave Franco and Alison Brie because they claimed they saw like a preview for the movie at Sundance, or they watched the movie and they were like, this is our movie script. They brought it to Dave Franco and Alison Brie like a couple years ago. And then now they're just like, and it's like almost the exact same plot.
Really?
Yeah, it's really crazy. And I was like wondering, like, there's no way they did that on purpose. I'm wondering if it's like a subconscious thing.
I don't know, because you also can't just be like, oh, like, I didn't realize. Like, it seems like a very specific plot.
That's why I'm like, there's no way they thought they would get away with that. Maybe they just didn't even remember and they just thought it was in their head.
I've done that before. Like, one time I tried to write a marketing campaign where it's like, what's better than being cool? Ice cold. And then someone was like, isn't that the song? And I was like, oh
yeah. I think about that with artists a lot when they accidentally like use like the same tune.
Yeah.
And I'm like, probably because they listen to music and they just have how many beats can we possibly think of?
Yeah. We're at a point in human history where we're just recreating everything we've ever done. However, I do think with this specific thing, it does sound like they stole it.
Well, yes. Yeah. And I realized that with Wes Anderson the other day, because I always think, I'm like, wow, Wes Anderson is such like an artistic, like the way that he sees things is just like unlike anybody else.
Yeah.
Like just, he's such an artist. And then I'm like, he's so unique. He's his own person. And then he was talking... And I still think that, but like he was talking about his movies in that video I was telling you about earlier. And he was referencing all these like foreign movies that he loves, like French movies. And they're very similar. And I'm like, okay, so he's not completely original. Like
everybody's something.
or even just inspired by something.
Yeah.
Which is fine. But yeah.
We're just all recycling the same IP from the beginning of time.
Yeah.
Go back to Mesopotamia. I'm sure you'll find some Wes Anderson films.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You will.
But anyways, thank you for joining us this week. I hope if you've lasted this far to hear our kind of... I feel like we really had like a spiral at the end there.
We did.
We really were getting each other going. As my dad says.
We riled each other up, as I say about Matilda.
Aww.
All riled up. All riled up.
Aw,
I get her all riled up before bed, and Matthew doesn't like that.
I could see why.
Yeah.
I could understand that. But if you made it this far, thank you. As always, please like, rate, review, subscribe. Please share it with your friends. We would love more friends. It's only me and Molly. We actually don't know anyone else.
We actually only exist in this room. We're like children of the attic or whatever that. Flowers in the attic. But we're not like that.
Children of the corn. It's just me and Molly.
We just live in this little office studio.
Yeah.
But we'll see you next time.
Bye.